200 angels stand on a mountaintop. They know what they're about to do is treason, not against a king, not against an empire, against the God who created them. And here's what makes this moment so disturbing. They're not being tricked. They're not being manipulated. They hold a vote. They make a pact. They swear an oath to each other, because every single one of them is terrified that when the moment comes, someone will back out. They know the punishment will be eternal. They know there's no coming back from this, and they do it anyway. But here's the question nobody asks. If these angels wanted human women, if this was really just about lust, why did they also bring with them secrets? Technologies, weapons, sorcery, knowledge that would push humanity to the edge of extinction within a few generations. Ooh, what were they actually trying to do? And why does the name of their leader show up, word for word, in one of the most sacred rituals in the entire Bible, 1,000 years later? To understand what happened on that mountain, we need to go back to a time before the flood, before Noah, before the world as we know it was wiped clean and rebuilt from scratch. The Bible gives us almost nothing about the pre-flood world. A few genealogies, a handful of verses. It's one of the most mysterious periods in all of Scripture. Thousands of years of human history compressed into a few pages. But what we do know is this: humanity was multiplying. Civilization was growing. And according to Genesis 6, something went catastrophically wrong. The conventional reading you've probably heard goes like this. People became sinful. God got angry. God sent a flood. Noah survived. The end. It's clean, it's simple, and it misses almost everything. Because tucked inside Genesis 6 are 4 verses that describe an event so bizarre, so disturbing, that most churches skip right past them. Verses 1 through 4. The sons of God saw the daughters of men. They took wives. They produced offspring called the Nephilim, giants, mighty warriors, men of renown. And then in verse 5, immediately after, God looks at the earth and sees that every thought of every human heart is only evil all the time. The wickedness is total, complete. And his response is total too. He decides to destroy everything. Now, the standard version of this story treats the flood as a response to generic human sin. But the text is telling you something more specific. And it's telling you what caused the corruption to reach that level. It's pointing you directly at the sons of God, the Bene Ha Elohim, the Watchers, and everything we need to know about who they were and what they did is buried in a book that was ripped out of the Bible over 1,000 years ago. Here's what we know about the book of 1st Enoch. It was written centuries before Jesus was born. Fragments of it were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, at least 11 copies, making it one of the most frequently copied texts at Qumran. The New Testament book of Jude directly quotes from it. Not paraphrases it. Quotes it, word for word. Jude 14 and 15 cite Enoch's prophecy as though it's authoritative scripture. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still includes it in their biblical canon to this day. Early church fathers, Tertullian, Irenaeus, a Justin martyr, referenced it seriously. It wasn't some fringe conspiracy document. For centuries, it was treated as essential reading for understanding the spiritual world. And then it was quietly removed, pushed to the margins, declared non-canonical by councils that decided which books belonged in the Bible and which didn't. Now, I'm not here to argue that 1st Enoch should be in the Bible. That's a different conversation. But I am going to show you what's inside it, because what's inside it fills in the gaps that Genesis leaves wide open. And more importantly, It connects to something in the book of Leviticus that will fundamentally change how you understand one of Israel's most sacred rituals. Let's start with what Enoch actually says. According to chapters 6 through 16 of 1st Enoch, there was a class of angels assigned to watch over humanity. Their job was observation, guardianship. They were called the Watchers, in Aramaic, the Iron, and for a time they did their job. But then something shifted. Their leader, an angel named Semjaza, looked at the women of earth and wanted them. And he wasn't alone. But Semjaza was afraid. He knew that if he acted alone and the others didn't follow, the full weight of God's judgment would fall only on him. He actually says this. The text records his fear. I fear that you will not agree to do this deed, and I alone will suffer for this great sin. And that's when the others made the pact. 200 of them. On Mount Hermon, they swore a mutual oath, a binding curse on each other, that they would all go through with it together. No one backs out. Everyone shares the guilt. While the name Hermon itself is a clue. In Hebrew, it comes from the root cherem, which means devoted to destruction. The mountain where the angels descended is literally named Destruction. The ancient writers weren't subtle about what happened there. They came down. They took wives. They fathered the Nephilim. But the text doesn't stop there. And this is the part that most people never hear. Because the Watchers didn't just produce children. They ran a curriculum. Enoch chapters 7 and 8 lay out exactly what each Watcher taught humanity. And it reads like a catalog of civilizational corruption. An angel named Azazel taught humans the art of metalworking, specifically the forging of swords, daggers, shields, and breastplates. Before Azazel, according to the text, humanity didn't have industrialized weapons. Yet he gave them the technology of war. But Azazel didn't stop there. He also taught the use of cosmetics, dyes, and the art of beautifying the eyelids. He taught the crafting of jewelry from precious stones. Now, on the surface, makeup and jewelry might seem harmless. But in the context of the ancient text, these are tools of seduction and vanity. Instruments designed to amplify the very desire that brought the Watchers down to earth in the first place. Other Watchers taught different disciplines. Barachiel taught astrology, the reading of the stars to predict and manipulate fate. Kokabiel taught the constellations. Arachiel taught the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. Sariel taught the course of the moon. Pinemu taught writing, which the text frames not as a gift, but as a corruption. Yet because he taught humans to use ink and paper for contracts, debts, and deception. And then there's Kazdeja. The text says Kazdeja taught the smitings of the spirit and of the demons, the smitings of the embryo in the womb, so that it may pass away. Read that again slowly. He taught how to kill unborn children, and he taught the knowledge of demonic practice, how to communicate with and invoke evil spirits. This wasn't random forbidden knowledge. This was a systematic download of everything humanity needed to destroy itself. Warfare, vanity, occult manipulation, divination, abortion, sorcery, all of it, delivered by angels who had been entrusted to protect the very people they were now corrupting. And the result is exactly what you'd expect. The earth spiraled into violence. The Nephilim, massive, powerful, and insatiable, consumed the resources of humanity. When the food ran out, the text says they turned on people. When that wasn't enough, they turned on each other. Blood soaked the ground. The cries of the dying rose to heaven. and heaven responded. According to 1 Enoch, 4 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, looked down at the earth and were horrified. They brought the case before God. And God issued a sentence. Raphael was sent to bind Azazel. The text says he was thrown into a pit in the desert, a jagged, dark place called Dudael, and covered with sharp rocks and darkness. He was to remain there, bound, until the day of final judgment, when he would be cast into fire forever. Michael was sent to bind Semjaza and the rest of the Watchers. They were imprisoned beneath the earth in chains of darkness, though their children, the Nephilim, were turned against each other, allowed to destroy themselves through civil war. And then the flood came to finish what was left. Now keep Azazel's name in your mind, lock it in, because we're going to leave the book of Enoch completely behind, and I'm going to take you to a passage in the Torah, the heart of the Mosaic Law, that has a secret hiding in plain sight for 3,400 years. Leviticus chapter 16. The Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the single holiest day in the entire Jewish calendar. Once a year, and only once, the high priest entered the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber of the tabernacle, where the presence of God dwelled between the wings of the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant. No one else could enter, no other day would do. Yet this was the moment when the sins of the entire nation of Israel were dealt with, and the ritual is extraordinary. God instructs Moses that on this day, the high priest must take 2 goats. 2. He must bring them before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle, and then he must cast lots over them. 1 lot for the Lord, and 1 lot for something else entirely. Most English translations render this second lot as the scapegoat. It's a word you've probably heard 100 times. The scapegoat, the goat that carries the sins of the people into the wilderness. But here's what your English Bible doesn't tell you. The Hebrew text doesn't say scapegoat. That's a translation decision, a gloss, made centuries later. The Hebrew text says the second lot is for Azazel. La Azazel. Read it again. The second goat is for Azazel, the same Azazel who taught humanity the weapons of war, the same Azazel who corrupted the world before the flood, the same Azazel who was bound in a pit in the desert and covered in darkness. That Azazel. Now, to be fair, there is scholarly debate about this word. Some argue that Azazel in Leviticus simply means removal, or the goat that goes away. That's the sanitized reading. It's the comfortable reading. But here's the problem with it. The Dead Sea Scrolls community, the people who copied both Leviticus and 1 Enoch, clearly understood Azazel in Leviticus 16 as a reference to the fallen angel. The 2 texts lived side by side in their library. They read them together. They saw the connection. For them, this wasn't a coincidence. It was the point. And the ritual itself makes far more sense when you understand who Azazel is. Just look at the structure. 1 goat is sacrificed to the Lord. Its blood brought into the Holy of Holies to atone for the sins of the people. That's the goat for God. Clean, holy. Its life given to cover transgression. But the second goat? The second goat is not killed. The high priest lays both hands on its head and confesses all the sins, all the wickedness, all the rebellion of Israel over it. The goat absorbs the sin, and then it's led out into the wilderness, into the barren, jagged wasteland, and released, sent away, sent to Azazel, sent to the desert, where Azazel is imprisoned. Stay with me here, because this is where everything we've been looking at crashes together. The Watchers came down and corrupted humanity. They taught us war, sorcery, vanity, and violence. that they're the reason the world became so wicked that God had to destroy it with a flood. Their leader, Azazel, bore the primary responsibility for the corruption of human civilization. And centuries later, God builds into the most sacred day of the Jewish calendar a ritual where the sins of the people, the very corruption that Azazel helped unleash, are loaded onto a goat and sent back to him, back to the one who started it. This isn't just atonement. This is a verdict. God is saying, you did this. You corrupted them. You taught them evil. And now, every year, the weight of that evil gets sent back to where it came from. Back to your prison. Back to the pit. You carry this. The sins of the world, placed on a sacrificial animal and sent into the wilderness to the fallen angel who helped cause them. And if that doesn't send a chill down your spine, wait. Because it goes one step further. Centuries after Leviticus was written, a man walks into the Judean wilderness. He hasn't eaten in 40 days. He's alone in the desert, the same type of barren, jagged wasteland where Azazel was imprisoned. And in that wilderness, he's confronted by Satan himself, tempted 3 times. And what does Satan offer him? The kingdoms of the world and their glory, power, authority, knowledge. The exact same categories of corruption the Watchers offered humanity at the beginning. And this man, Jesus, refuses. Every single temptation. He quotes scripture. He stands. He does not fall. Where Adam fell in the garden, where humanity fell before the flood, where the Watchers dragged civilization into darkness, this one man holds the line. And here's the connection that makes all of it come together. On the Day of Atonement, 2 goats. One is killed. Its blood covers the sin. One is sent alive into the wilderness, bearing the sin of the people, sent to Azazel. On the cross, Jesus is killed. His blood covers the sin of the world. But before that, in the wilderness, he was sent out, alone, bearing the weight of temptation, into the domain where the fallen ones dwell. He faced what Azazel represents, and he won. He was both goats, the one whose blood was shed, and the one who walked into the wilderness and confronted the source of the corruption itself. Now go back to Genesis 6 with this in your mind. Before, the Watcher's story might have felt like a strange, mythological aside, a weird chapter that doesn't fit, something the church rightly left in the margins. But now you can see what it actually is. It's the backstory. It's the reason the sacrificial system exists at all. It's the reason the Day of Atonement was structured the way it was. It's the reason Jesus went into the wilderness before he began his ministry. The entire arc, from the angels descending on Mount Hermon, to the goat being sent into the desert on Yom Kippur, to Jesus standing alone in the wilderness, is one continuous thread. The corruption, the judgment, the atonement, and the final victory. And remember those breadcrumbs we dropped earlier? The forbidden knowledge the Watchers gave humanity. Weapons, sorcery, astrology, vanity. Look at what Jesus confronts at the cross. The Roman soldiers cast lots for his clothing. Divination. They beat him with weapons of war. They mocked him with a crown and a purple robe. Vanity and false glory. They offered him drugged wine, sorcery, pharmakeia. Every category of corruption the Watchers introduced comes full circle at Calvary. And Jesus absorbs all of it, takes it into himself, and puts it to death. We walked into this story thinking the Watchers were a footnote, a strange piece of ancient mythology that the church was probably right to set aside. But they're not a footnote. They're the inciting incident. everything that follows in the Bible, the flood, the law, the sacrificial system, the prophets, and the cross itself, is God's answer to what the Watchers started. 200 angels swore an oath on a mountain called destruction. They thought they could corrupt God's creation beyond repair. They thought that if they poisoned the bloodline, or weaponized the culture and drowned the world in darkness, there would be no way back. They were wrong. Because centuries later, on another mountain, a hill called Golgotha, one man undid everything they had done. Not with an army, not with forbidden knowledge, not with a pact of 200, with a cross, with blood, with 3 words. It is finished. The Watchers are still in chains. They'll remain there until the day of judgment, exactly as the text says. But the corruption they unleashed, the violence, the sorcery, the deception, the darkness, has already been defeated. Not by avoiding it, not by hiding from it, but by walking straight into the wilderness, straight into the domain of the fallen, and refusing to bow. That's the story of the Watchers, not a myth, not a footnote. The reason the cross was necessary in the first place. If this investigation changed how you read Genesis 6, the story of the Nephilim goes even deeper, into who their descendants were, why they were in the Promised Land, and what David was really doing when he picked up those 5 stones. That one's right here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. We do this every single week.